Hello and welcome back. Today I'm breaking down defenseman tiers, and this is vitally important. As we saw in the points and category strategy videos, your D-core really matters. And last night I watched a little bit of the Fantasy Puck live stream with Nate from Apples and Ginos. They were going through a mock draft, and in that mock draft the D run went extremely early, which left both of them with slightly less impactful D-cores, which was basically my only critique of their teams. They both put together excellent teams, and arguably they're both better fantasy hockey players than I am because they've obviously done better in the Creators League over the last 2 seasons. So this got me thinking about how I would handle that situation. So today I'm breaking everything down using one of my favorite tools, and that is the 3D scatter plot. So what this shows is point per game ceiling on this far axis up and down. You've got completeness rating here from left to right, and you've got power play percentage. This is data collected from 227 onward, just before the trade deadline, and how often a player was on power play 1. So as we start to look and break this down, what we can first notice is the tier separation by color. So you've got elite D1s in orange, you've got strong D2s in green, you've got D3s in purple, and then depth D4s over here in gray. So what this is power play percentage. Obviously the D4s are going to be guys who are not getting a lot of power play time, and then the guys that you want are getting that power play time. So we'll break it down, and I'll keep spinning this around to differentiate between power play percentage and completeness level. But the first thing we'll do is start by taking a look at elite D1s. So as I filter this out, all of these guys are going to have basically 100% power play percentage. Otherwise, they're not elite D1s. So we'll spin this around and we'll take a look at completeness level. And so from left to right, you're looking at more complete to less complete. So I'll bring this in a little bit so you can kind of get the breakdown. Obviously, Makar is in a tier of his own. So 92 points in 82 games, 1.17 point per game ceiling over the last 3 years. It was 1.15 last year. So pretty consistently above a point per game. You don't really have to sell anybody on Makar. The only thing is I don't think I would pay ADP 6 price on that. And I'll get into that as we move forward into a points league breakdown where you can kind of visualize where Kale Makar fits using the custom point weighting tool that I've designed. You can get access to that in the Patreon link in the description below. But you also have a couple of other guys here who are going very early. As we zoom in just a touch, we can see Quinn Hughes here, ADP 11.9, basically 12. He's obviously their power play 1 guy. He is relatively complete at a 78, but a lot less complete than Makar and a guy like Dahlin. The power play numbers are off the charts. That's why he's so high up here. The point per game ceiling is 1.12. The power play points per game, 0.43. 29 power play points in 68 games is crazy. The blocks were down a little bit last year. The hits are non-existent. The shot volume was pretty good, and you're getting elite level play out of Quinn Hughes. You know what you're going to get out of him in terms of assists, and then he added in the shot volume in the last 2 seasons, so he's become a little bit more valuable just based on that peripheral profile kind of rounding out a little bit. In terms of guys that I would want for a category league, I would want the guys closer to this left axis. So guys like Dahlin, who maybe have that lower point per game ceiling, that's why he's lower down here, but 0.94 is still really good, and he's extremely complete. If you look at his completeness level, that comp number, 86.5, that is really, really good. You look at Kale Makar, 86.8, so they're pretty much similarly complete. You get 2.74 shots per game, 1.38 hits, 1.34 blocks. You're getting a lot of category coverage out of this guy. He's locked in on power play 1. He's in his prime. You could even pencil him in for maybe even a breakout season because obviously Buffalo's power play hasn't been great, but they do have room to improve. I believe it was 2 years ago, Tage Thompson went ballistic for like 94 points. Their power play was off the charts, and Dahlin, if he's going to be on that power play, which he definitely is going to soak up a lot of those power play points. So even his relative floor at 0.29 power play points per game is really good. So really good complete category defenseman. If you're looking at like mini tiers within this tier, I would say Makar, Hughes, Dahlin are 3 of the best here. As we zoom in a little bit, I'll pull this up and you can take a look at these 2 guys. Roman Josi is completely healthy. I watched an interview with him the other day. He says he's perfectly fine, and now he knows what he's dealing with, so he'll be able to manage the symptoms a little bit better. Really complete, 81.8, basically an 82 in completeness rating. That's excellent, especially for a category league. You're getting a 1.04 point per game ceiling. Last year, he was well below that because of those injury risks, the injuries that, not injuries, but the situation he was dealing with. I can't remember, I think it's POTS syndrome. 53 games played last year. You would expect him to play a little bit more than that. He's a minute muncher. He's going to soak up all those minutes. 2.83 shots per game, 1.79 blocks. Power play point per game, 0.32 is excellent. So very complete, well-rounded defenseman, getting a discount at ADP 57. That's excellent value if you can find him anywhere near that. You got Werenski down here. The problem that I have with this is the ADP is very high and his point per game ceiling came from last season. So 82 points in 81 games, 23 goals, second in the NHL in terms of defensemen. Power play numbers are excellent, 0.31 power play points per game. Shots, 3.68 per game is, I believe, top 5 in the NHL. So you're getting a unicorn in terms of shot volume, goal scoring, and everything else that you would want in terms of a defenseman. The profile is relatively complete. The only thing he doesn't do is hit. But I would say of these guys, if you're in a category league, you obviously would want Makar, but if you can't get him, Josi, Werenski, Dahlin, these three would be guys I would target for that D1. Points league, I would look at some of these peripheral, like these outer edge guys. So Bouchard, a little bit less complete. 77.3 on the completeness rating, 67 points and 82 is a touch low for him. He's got that point per game ceiling. Shot volume at 2.87 is good. The blocks are good at 1.32. He's cemented on that power play. He played a full 82 game season last year, so there isn't much injury risk. ADP 18 seems right for him, and in a points league, he's going to dominate because of the metrics that he puts up. The blocks, the assists, the power play points, the shot volume, even the goals at 14 goals is pretty good. So you know what you're going to get out of Bouchard. He's very, safe, I guess, in that range. The question becomes, what do you do if you're getting Morrissey or Hamilton? I do have these guys as elite D1s. And the main reason, obviously, the point per game ceiling for Morrissey is close to 8 point per game. You're getting a relatively complete guy, 2.15 shots per game, 1.4 blocks is decent. Power play numbers are pretty good. There's a touch down from his previous season. 62 points in 80 games is pretty good as well. 14 goals, not bad. And he is locked in on that power play unit. So you are getting a power play quarterback on a really good team in the Central. They might be a touch worse without Ehlers, but they're still going to be very competitive in there. And then Dougie Hamilton is an interesting discussion. When he's in the lineup, he is usually the power play one guy. So the question is health. 64 games last year, 40 points in those 64 is pretty good. The power play numbers are good. They're not elite level compared to some of these other guys. If you look at Quinn Hughes, 0.43 power play points per game, Makar, 0.44. These guys are all in that 0.3, 0.31 range. He's a little bit lower at 0.23, but the shot volume is excellent, 2.91. The hits are good at 1.16. The blocks are good at 1.3 blocks per game. So really decent profile in terms of a completeness level and trying to find a guy for a category league. The obvious question here is injury risk and the potential to lose some of those minutes to a guy like Luke Hughes. So if you're drafting in this range and you're looking at ADP 37 or ADP 69, which is very late for Dougie Hamilton, and you're trying to get another defenseman to pair with that D1, this is what I would do. So if you're going to draft Morrissey or Hamilton, I would look at a guy like Fox or Hedman to try to pair with him. So you're getting that elite level point ceiling in terms of Adam Fox. He should be a bounce back candidate. 0.82 points per game is a little bit low for him. He is a point per game guy. The power play numbers, the Rangers power play was 27th in the league last year. They are usually a top 5 power play. They still have that personnel, even though they lost Chris Kreider. They should be a really good power play unit to get exposure to. 61 points in 74 games is a really nice floor. He's kind of complete. You would love to see a lot more shot volume and some more hits. And maybe Gavrikov frees him up to be a little bit more offensive this year. So I would like that paired with Morrissey or Hamilton or Hedman. Hedman is very consistent, 0.97 point per game ceiling, a little bit below that last year, but 66 points in 79 games is pretty good. You also get 0.33 power play points per game, which is nice, 2.29 shots per game, and the blocks are really good at 1.68 blocks per game. So relatively complete. 15 goals on the season is nice as well. You're getting elite level exposure to Kucherov and Point and all those guys on that power play that you would want. As we move a little bit further along, there's some other guys to talk about, and I'll start to get rid of these elite D1s. We'll just look at the D2s. So when we're looking at this, You've got Fox, who's less complete, Hedman a little bit more complete. You've got Lane Hudson back here, who is their power play guy. 60 assists last year is really excellent in terms of assist coverage, but the shot volume is just really, really low. 1.1 shots per game. Hits are really low, so that's why he's further back to this right. If we zoom out, you can see this is the completeness level, so he's not anywhere near as complete as a bunch of these other guys. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about Lane Hudson as your power play quarterback. I don't think of him as a D1. I would prefer him as a D3 just because of the lack of peripheral profile, but I understand he's not going to get drafted like that. As we look at a guy like Brendan Montour, this is an interesting conversation because he splits time with Vince Dunn a little bit. So from 227 onward, 80% of the time he was on power play 1. They do kind of split their units, so it's like, what do you call power play 1? But with that, he does have a little bit lower power play point per game ceiling, 0.14. The shot volume is excellent, though. 2.85 shots, 1 hit, and 1.23 blocks per game is a pretty decent profile, relatively complete, 75 on the completeness rating. The point per game last year, pretty low at about a half a point per game, but that is pretty far away from his ceiling. So if you wanted to bet on upside, I would think of Montour a little bit more as a solid D3 than a D2, but in terms of the numbers, the shot volume is something that you do want to pay attention to. That could be a nice profile to add as a D2 if you're looking at it. You could also look at Shea Theodore. Shea Theodore should be the power play 1 guy this year. They do have Hannafin, who might get some time, but Pietrangelo is not playing. So Shea Theodore should be cemented on that power play unit. His per game numbers for power play points, excellent at 0.28. Shot volume is a touch low. Absolutely no hitting to speak of whatsoever. The point per game last year, 0.85, is really close to his ceiling, so you kind of know what you're going to get in terms of points per game. 57 points in 67 is not bad. 7 goals is a little bit low. Some of these other guys are in that 13 to 15 range, which is probably a little bit more preferable. So as we look at some of these other guys, we'll get into a little bit different profiles from these guys. These are more assist heavy point per game guys, but as you look down here, these are the category guys that you want to pay attention to. So you got Mackenzie Weegar here. There is a little bit of a threat from Zane Parekh in terms of power play 1 time. I'll get into that as we move along. But last year, I questioned whether or not he'd be the power play 1 guy, and he was. 0.26 power play points per game is pretty good. The elite level peripherals are why you would draft Mackenzie Weegar. ADP 51 seems right for that. 2.27 shots, 2.75 hits, 2.37 blocks per game. Elite percentiles for all 3 of those metrics. You also get pretty good assist levels and the power play exposure. I went over him in detail in the category league video. If you're in a category league, I would love him as a D2. Of the two between Seider and Weegar, I would prefer Seider. He seems to be more locked in on power play 1, 100% of the time from 227 onward. 0.29 power play points per game is a touch better. The shot volume is a little lower. The hits are elite level 2.59 and the blocks 2.21. Also really good. You know his peripheral profile is great. The point per game ceiling is lower though, so that's why he's so far down on this list. So you kind of know what you're going to get in terms of peripherals. You are hoping for upside offensively speaking if you're looking for Seider. You could also take a look at Seth Jones. He's going at ADP 93. Really complete profile. So 81.1. If you look at Seider, he's an 83. If you look at Weegar, he's an 84. So you're getting very complete defensemen here. If you're in a categories league, I would target these guys as opposed to these guys as your D2. So Seth Jones, he did play for Chicago for a lot of this, or at least some of this. I know this is the power play percentage was taken from after the trade deadline. He was already on Florida, but they did have Ekblad, who was suspended, so he took over a lot of that power play time and did pretty well with it. 0.30 power play points per game. So I would imagine he gets the first look on that power play unit. 2 shots, 1.5 hits, 1.73 blocks. So a little bit lower in terms of peripheral profile compared to Seider and Weegar, but still pretty complete. And the point per game ceiling is a little bit lower at 0.57, so just keep that in mind. He would be my third option of this group. That brings us to this sort of mid-tier, and these are some guys that you probably want to pay attention to. Sergachev, as I was doing this analysis, kind of stood out. 100% of the time on power play 1, pretty decent power play point per game numbers. 0.3 is really good. That seems to be that level that we want to target in this range. You've got 53 points in 77 games. The shot volume is a little low. The hits can be higher than this, and the blocks are pretty good at 1.82. I think he just logged so many minutes last year with all the injuries they had that he kind of lost a little bit of that per game value in terms of hits and shots, but he can do that. 0.81 point per game ceiling is pretty decent. He was a little bit below that last year, so there is some room for positive regression. And then on top of that, you got elite level exposure to guys like Genther, to guys like Cooley, maybe Schmaltz and Keller on that power play unit. So this is all signs are pointing up for Mikhail Sergachev. I like him as a D2. I would love him as a D3, but this is a guy who's used to be relatively complete, still pretty complete at a 78. So this is something that I'm keeping my eye on. Jake Sanderson is another guy who I kind of, this was a little bit surprising. The 0.38 power play points per game, I believe that has him third on this entire list, including the elite guys. So if you're looking at power play points per game, it was Makar, it was Quinn Hughes, and then Sanderson, I believe, was third at 0.38. 30 power play points in 80 games last year. The shot volume is nice at 2.44. Blocks are excellent at 2 blocks per game. So you're getting a pretty decent profile, 11 goals, 57 total points. He's pretty much locked in on power play 1. A little bit of a threat from Shabbat, not much of a threat, but kind of, just in the back of your mind. I think it used to be more of a 1A, 1B. I think Sanderson has taken over that power play role at this point. So he would be an excellent D2 option. Then you also have John Carlson, and we'll get into this in a little bit more detail. I'll bring in Jacob Chychrun in just a second, but I just want to give you the profile here. 51 points and 79. Power play point per game, a little bit lower, only 70% of the time on power play 1 because Chychrun does take a little bit of that time. 2.1 shots per game, 1.6 blocks per game. Still a really good profile, relatively complete at a 72. Point per game ceiling at 0.72, so he's more of a safe D3 option, but you could argue that he's a D2 just because he does take a little bit more of that power play time in Washington. So when I bring in Jacob Chychrun, he's pretty much right here, neck and neck with Carlson. The power play percentage is lower. That's why I have him as a D3 as opposed to a D2. And you're dealing with Ovechkin, who's that power play guy in Washington, and he's been playing with John Carlson for 15 years. So you would think that he prefers Carlson on that unit, which is why I have Chychrun as a D3. If you could guarantee me Chychrun on PP1, I would definitely have him as a D2. The profile is really good, 2.4 shots, 1.8 blocks. 20 goals last year is excellent. 47 points is not bad. The power play numbers are okay. So there's the comparison. Make of this what you will. This is exactly what you would want to see for your D3, is a guy in a potential timeshare where you don't know he's 100% locked in on power play 1. And if you get him and he does get that assignment, you get a lot of value in that range. So real quick, we'll go over these guys down here. I have Thomas Harley as a D2, and I'm not 100% sure that he is going to be the power play 1 guy, but last year he was towards the end of the season, and even in the playoffs when Heiskanen was healthy. That's a point that Fantasy Puck Chris mentioned last night on the live stream, that he believes that he will be the power play 1 guy. If you believe that as well, he's excellent value at the ADP 70 range, and he would be a really decent D2. So 73, 74 on the completeness rating, 50 points in 78 games. The power play points per game is okay. It's not great. The goal scoring is pretty good. 16 goals last year, 2.19 shots, 1.4 blocks per game. There are a couple of better options that we went over. Of these guys, I would probably prefer Sergachev or Sanderson over Harley, just because Sergachev is pretty much locked in on power play 1. Sanderson is a little bit more solidified on power play 1. Harley, there is a bit of a question mark there. Same thing with Doughty. Doughty did play a lot of power play time in a limited sample size. 17 points in 30 games is pretty good after he dealt with injury last year. 0.20 power play points per game. Shots are pretty low at 1.5. Hits aren't there as much as they used to be. 1.5 blocks is okay, not great. And there is a threat of Brandt Clark getting some power play time as well. ADP 125 seems like a reasonable spot for him. I would maybe label him as a solid D3, but one thing that I have been notified about from our Discord group is that Jim Hiller seems to not like Brandt Clark as much, doesn't give him a lot of power play or doesn't give him a lot of ice time, at least in the playoffs. Doughty seems to be getting the ice time for Jim Hiller, so that's why I have him kind of in this D2 range. If Jim Hiller is going to favor the veterans, then Doughty could be the power play 1 guy, and you get him at ADP 126. That seems like excellent value. Tony DeAngelo is kind of a sleeper in the sense that he will probably be the power play 1 guy. He was getting a ton of ice time, about 23 minutes a night last year for Patrick Waugh and the Islanders. Their power play was just terrible. That's why he only has 4 power play points. They should have a better power play this year with Jonathan Drouin coming in, a little bit more offensive punch. Matt Barzell's healthy again, so I would bet on an upseason for Horvat, Barzell, some of those guys, and that will probably leak into Tony DeAngelo. I don't believe that Schaefer will be the power play one quarterback from day one all the way through the end of the season. He could get a sniff there. I would kind of hope that they send him back to, I guess they can't send him to the AHL. He would have to go back to Erie in the juniors. I would probably prefer that if I'm the Islanders, just because he didn't play a lot of games last year, and you're asking a lot of an 18-year-old kid. If that is the case, if he's not the power play one guy, it's Tony DeAngelo. So you can get excellent value on him. He's not even rated with an ADP right now. So that's something to keep an eye on if you're looking for a really good value power play quarterback. And then last but not least, we have Shane Gostisbehere. The only thing I don't like about this is it's very assist heavy, but the power play point per game, 0.39, I believe that puts him just ahead of Sanderson, who I just said was third. So that would make Sanderson fourth. Really excellent power play assist numbers, 38 assists on the season, 45 points. The goals are a little low. The shot volume is a little bit low at 1.74. The blocks aren't there. The hits aren't there. Not a lot of peripherals. And I believe he was on third pairing minutes last year. So 5-on-5, you're not getting a lot. You're just getting him for the power play exposure. The power play should be pretty good this year. ADP 127 seems like value for him as well. Now, as I bring in the D3s, you can kind of compare them with some of these guys that we've already looked at. I'll try to pull this down so you can see a little bit more of everybody. There's a guy way at the top here who we have to talk about, and that is Erik Karlsson. If I bring everybody back in, he, technically speaking, over the last 3 seasons has the highest point per game ceiling at 1.23. That's a couple seasons ago. He had that incredible season with San Jose. And I want to bring that to your attention because he was doing that on a terrible team in San Jose, and he's probably going to be on a terrible team in Pittsburgh this year. There is a little bit of competition from Letang, but he does have this in him to be that 1.2 point per game guy. I don't think he's going to be that again. Obviously, we know he's getting older. This isn't a good team. But with that said, he was about half that production last year, 0.65 points per game. The power play numbers, 0.18 per game level, 15 power play points, but 53 total points. A full 82 game season from him is excellent to see. Usually he has some injury risk associated. The hits aren't there. The blocks are okay at 1.1. But in terms of a point ceiling, if you're looking in a points league where you get those power play points, I think Karlsson is excellent value as a D3. At 123, 124 ADP, this would be a no-brainer pick in my opinion, just because of that ceiling. And Pittsburgh still has Crosby, Malkin, Rust on that power play. He's going to have elite level exposure. Just wanted to bring that to your attention just because of the fact that he's that high up on the list. And as we go through this, he's probably going to be off the charts here as we kind of go like that. But when we look at just the D3s, you can see here Luke Hughes, still not signed. I don't know what the deal is with that. He's looking for a 5-year deal. They want either a short-term or a long-term deal. They don't want to have him hit free agency with his brother. But if they get him signed, you know what you're going to get in terms of the power play exposure. They like him. Obviously him and his brother should have some chemistry. The only thing that I think from a tactical level, they probably want a right shot on that power play. There's a lot of lefties. You look at, Heischer, Bratt, Hughes, Meyer, all lefties. They probably want a right shot just to balance it out a little bit, and Dougie Hamilton has a bomb. So I would expect Dougie Hamilton to get those first pairing minutes or the first power play minutes. Luke Hughes obviously can run a power play when Dougie Hamilton gets hurt inevitably. 0.23 power play points per game is excellent. The assist numbers are good. The overall point per game is pretty good at 0.62. He has that point per game ceiling. The peripherals aren't really there, and that's why he's further off to the right. So keep that in mind as you're trying to draft Luke Hughes. 105 seems a little bit rich for this. You're definitely betting on upside, but you could take him here and then maybe go out and get a more complete D4 option to try to, balance out your profile with your D-core. Now, I have Miro Heiskanen here. I had to manually put him here because he was not on power play 1 last year. He was injured for a stretch. That's why Harley ended up taking over. But he will probably get some power play time at some point, and there is a non-zero chance that he's the power play 1 guy. His point per game ceiling, 0.92, is very high. So it's a low risk, high reward option. I just think that at ADP 86, that's a little bit early. I'd like to get him after the 100 range in ADP, just because you're not exposed to that power play naturally. You have to hope that they favor him, or the new coach comes in, Glenn Gulletson, likes to, maybe go to Miro Heiskanen as opposed to Harley. And if that's the case, you get excellent value, but I wouldn't pay a huge premium on it. 2.16 shots per game is pretty good. The power play numbers are a little bit low though, and he was a half a point per game last year. So there is some room for improvement. You'd have to hope that he gets the power play time. Now up next, this is Riley. He's a interesting conversation because he did not get any power play time on power play 1 last year. All power play 2, they ran 5 forwards last year, which they're not going to be able to do without Mitch Marner. So he should get the power play 1 minutes. He's the indications coming out of camp are that he's going to get a try at power play 1. At least in preseason. The shots are really low. The hits are non-existent. The blocks are pretty good at 1.6. 41 points in 82, half a point per game. Nothing crazy there. And his ceiling isn't that high, but you're getting the elite level exposure to Matthews and Nylander and Tavares and all those guys, Matthew Nyes, etc. So the exposure's good. It's a nice setup for him at 135 ADP. That's probably a really good bet to make for your D3. Now, in terms of these guys, as we zoom in here, there's a little bit of a mid-tier here. So you've got Dobson, who's probably the power play 2 guy. It's between him and Matheson in Montreal for that power play 2 spot. Power play numbers haven't been good. Lane Hudson's are much better, so you're definitely not going to get that power play 1 exposure. But even at 5-on-5, 2.76 shots, 1.7 blocks is a nice profile, 76.5 completeness rating. His ceiling point per game wise is right above, right at that 0.89 level, so a little bit below that point per game level. But he has it in him to be offensive, and they've got a really good offense there. So if you're looking to try to bet on a guy who, 1 injury away from maybe power play 1 in Montreal, that's kind of what you're looking for in this D3 range. Vince Dunn is another example like that, where he's, kind of a split time power play guy. 53% of the time he was on power play 1. Very assist heavy, but the shot volume is good at 2.21, 1.27 blocks, 39 points in 62 games is okay. The completeness level, 73. It's not as much of a sexy file as it was a couple years ago, and you're competing with Montour, but he is going to get a look there. So this is exactly what we look for in our D3s, is that split power play time, that narrative that makes him drop in ADP. At 115, that's probably a good spot for him. In terms of Charlie McAvoy, power play numbers not good at all. So 0.08 power play points per game. There's a case to be made that Hampus Lindholm could get that, or even Mason Lowry, who we'll see in the depth D4 section. McAvoy has a nice profile in terms of peripherals, 1.78 hits, 1.62 blocks, almost 2 shots per game. So you like all of that in terms of a category league. You can see him further over to the left over here. That means he's a little bit more complete. As I zoom this out, you can see completeness on this axis. So he is a little bit more complete, kind of more like Chychrun or Dobson in that regard, but just a lot less power play production. And this is not necessarily a power play that you'd want exposure to. Obviously, Pastrnak is going to get those power play points, and you do want that exposure. But this isn't one of the top tier power plays in the league, at least not what we think going into the season. 23 points and 50 seems low. He's coming off an injury. You could get good value on him. If you're looking for a peripheral D3 in that same type of archetype as a Uyghur or a Sider, but you just want a little bit more value on that and maybe a little bit less peripheral profile just because all of those numbers are slightly lower, you could get Charlie McAvoy at value at 104. I mentioned Chychrun before. I'm not going to go over him. Wallman, power play 2, interesting case to be made here. He is a good blocks defenseman. 2.23 blocks is really good. 2.5 shots is also really good. The power play numbers, I believe that has some of the San Jose numbers baked in. 40 points and 65 is not bad. 0.61 point per game. That is his ceiling, but he is pretty complete at a 77. So not a bad pickup. This is sort of like, Ekholm in years past would be a similar comp. You're hoping for power play 2 exposure and some, exposure to McDavid and Draisaitl. Now, this is a conversation that I'm probably going to get some heat for. Jackson Lacombe, D3, I have him as, and the reasoning is he was not getting all of the power play time last year. You could argue that they split their units and hit, power play 2 was actually their power play 1, and I'm here for that conversation. He should be the power play 1 guy this year. But if you look at the numbers, it's a little bit, less prolific than some of those D2s that we talked about. 1.79 shots, 1.72 blocks is pretty good. Hits, almost a hit per game is pretty good. The power play point per game numbers, a little bit low for what I would consider a D2. We saw a lot of those D2 guys at 0.3, 0.25. He's at 0.12, so about half of that. I would expect some positive regression. They're a better team this year. He's probably going to get a bunch of goals, 14 goals last year. 43 points is pretty good, relatively complete at about a 75. The ceiling is a little bit low just based on the fact that he hasn't played a lot. I would assume that he could break out this year, and that's why he's getting drafted pretty high. Not high, but 115 seems about right for Jackson Lacombe. I've seen him go a lot higher in some mocks because people are very high on him. I wouldn't take that. I would probably take him in this 115 range. Seems like you're getting good value on a D3 at that level, but I don't necessarily think I'd draft him as a D2. This is where we kind of get into a little bit of a different profile. So I'm going to spin it around and we're going to look at this in terms of power play percentage, because this is what happens with your D3s. You've got a couple of guys over here on the left who are getting a lot of power play time. Erik Karlsson. You got Cam Fowler here, who was getting a lot of power play time towards the end of the season. Same point per game, power play point per game, 0.12, seems a little bit low. Shot volume, very low. Blocks are okay. This is a conversation. It's either him, Justin Falk, maybe even Philip Broberg, but it seems like they gave the power play minutes to Cam Fowler, and he was excellent in the playoffs. So 145 seems like a reasonable bet on a D3 for Fowler. Faber has that Zeev Buium effect where Buium could come in and push for that power play one spot. You look at his power play point per game, 0.13, same type of thing as Fowler. Not that prolific on the power play. The shot volume is relatively low. The hits aren't there. The blocks are pretty good at 1.5-ish, but really nothing elite level here for Brock Faber. You're kind of getting a similar profile to Charlie McAvoy, just maybe not. You do get better power play exposure if he is the power play guy, but in the past they've gone to Spurgeon, they've gone to Faber, they've gone to Brodin, they've also got Zeev Buium in the mix there, so I wouldn't love this as a power play guy, and he doesn't quite have the elite level peripherals of a guy like McAvoy, who we talked about earlier. Then we've got Brandt Clark down here. I mentioned him earlier with Doughty. He was getting a bunch of power play time. He didn't do the best with it, 0.12 power play points per game. Shot volume is a little bit low. Blocks are pretty good at 1.5. 33 points and 78 is a touch low, and that seems to be his ceiling. Again, Jim Hiller doesn't seem to favor him. He seems to like Drew Doughty, so you could get a nice premium on Brandt Clark. And what I would offer in terms of advice, all of you out there who are looking at Zeev Buium, Zane Parekh, all of these kind of young defensemen, I would bet on Brandt Clark ahead of either of those guys just because he's a little bit more solidified. He's played a little bit more in the NHL. He's a little bit older. He's still got that elite level talent that you saw not just in junior but in the AHL levels. So he would be that bet for me as opposed to Buium or Parekh. I think his position is a little bit more solidified in the top four, and I do think he will get some power play time this upcoming season. Now, as we look at this middle section here, we've got, Dunn, Chychrun, Wallman. We talked about Lacombe, Hronek. There are a couple of guys in this range who are power play 2 or, have a little bit of that, they're kind of blocked by somebody on power play 1. Wallman, Hronek, Hanifin, Shea, all of these guys could be power play 2 guys. They could step in and fill in a role if there's an injury there, but none of these guys, you see 70% of the time for Hanifin, you've got 70% for Shea. That was with a Yossi injury, so they still didn't give him the full power play minutes with Yossi out. Only 33 points. Seems a little bit low. You got Hronek here, who usually has better shot volume than that. That's really low. The hits are good. The blocks are okay. 33 points and 61 is a little bit better than a guy like Shea. But then you get Sam Rinzel. This is another younger defenseman. Small sample size, 9 games, but 5 points, 5 assists. A couple of those on the power play. So 3 out of his 5 points on the power play. He could be the power play 1 guy in Chicago. They also have Levshinov. I would think they're going to give it to Rinzel right off the bat. 2.44 shots per game is excellent. 1.33 hits is excellent. It is a small sample size, but you're potentially getting a power play 1 quarterback at ADP 168, which is excellent value. So I definitely want to put him on your radar. He could be an excellent D3 option. You're throwing a dart at the dartboard, hoping for upside in that range of the draft. And last but not least, we got Olin Zellweger. There is a conversation with Lacombe. Zellweger does get some power play time. Even Mintyukov at the end of the year was getting a little bit of power play time. So there is a little bit of a threat. That's why I have Lacombe as a D3. I do think it will be Lacombe's power play to run. But 20 points and 62, okay. Power play points, 5 on the season, not great. 2.1 shots per game is good. The blocks are pretty good as well, but just had to put him on here because he has quarterbacked that power play in the past. Now, as I bring in the D4s, we'll zoom it back out and you can kind of see how this shakes out. Almost none of these guys are guaranteed PP1. So as I remove the D3 options, we'll take a look. Ekblad, he didn't play a lot towards the end of the season. He was suspended, but when he was in the lineup, he was the power play guy. It will probably be Seth Jones, but I do want to mention him here because he can quarterback a power play. He is a guy who's played on that team for a long time and has quarterbacked that power play, and his numbers are not that bad. 0.20 power play points per game, 11 of his 33 points on the power play. The ceiling is relatively low. The profile is not bad, 1.6 hits, 1.14 blocks, just a shade under 2 shots per game. I'd like a little bit better, but in terms of D4s, there's not that many guys here that I would trust as a D4, so I'll go over them now. Ekblad, I would probably trust in this range. I would also probably trust maybe Matheson. Maybe he gets a little bit of power play 2-time. Excellent blocks, 2.1 blocks per game. If you're in a standard Yahoo point weighting format, he will get you a little bit more point weighting for that. 1 block per game, you're getting an automatic 2 points and a couple shots per game as well. And he could get some power play 2 minutes. I also don't mind a couple of these other guys here. Rasmus Anderson, contract year. There's been talk of him getting traded, but the block volume, excellent. 2.42 is elite level, 2 shots per game. He does get some power play production, 9 power play points last year, so almost a third of his points coming on the power play. The ceiling is relatively low. He's not crazy complete, and he's not necessarily going to get that power play time, especially if Parekh does make the team. While we're here, I guess we'll talk about Parekh. This is 1 game sample size, and I guess this is his point per game ceiling, around a point per game. I do think there's a non-zero chance he does not make the opening night roster. He's 19 years old. He's very young, and his defensive game is not necessarily NHL level. I don't believe they used him in the playoffs because of that. I could be wrong about that. I don't watch Calgary as closely as some of the other teams, but just in terms of rookies, I usually fade rookie D just because of the fact that there's a wide variety of options here, and you don't exactly know what you're going to get. He does have that elite profile, so if you're betting on upside and you want to get him, 139 seems like it's an okay spot to draft him, but just know that there is a chance that he gets sent back to junior or maybe even the AHL. Probably not junior, but there is a slight chance that he's not on the team. And if he is on the team, there is still a chance that he's not the PP1 guy with Mackenzie Weegar there, Rasmus Anderson as well. They might want to showcase Anderson to try to trade him. So just a couple of words of caution. I think a lot of people are very high on Parekh, and I understand that because of his skill level, but I do want to, just pause, pump the brakes on that a little bit and just remind you that he's very young, and they don't usually give young guys like that the power play 1 keys right off the bat out of camp. Now in this range, there's a bunch of other options in terms of what you could look for. There's a lot of peripheral guys. You've got Letang here, 2.2 shots, 1.62 hits, 1.35 blocks per game, and a little bit of power play exposure on PP2, 12 power play points in 30 of his 30 total points. So pretty decent profile there for Letang. He's always been this kind of peripheral guy. You also have Darnell Nurse. He's the elite level peripheral guy, 2.47 shots, 2.2 hits, 1.79 blocks. That's really high. So if you're looking at McAvoy, if you're looking at, maybe Brock Faber, I'd prefer Nurse as a D3 or D4 over any of those guys. As I've mentioned in the category and points league videos, the D3 would be a power play quarterback upside guy. So I would draft Nurse as a D4, and 154 seems like a really good ADP to get him at. So I would love that pick there. You also have Parayko, same type of profile, just a little bit lower in terms of shots and hits, but the blocks are excellent, 2.33 blocks. And in a standard point format for Yahoo, you're getting a point per block. So that is worth noting as well. You also have Neil Pionk here, who does get a little bit of power play 2-time. He does have that kind of complete profile at a 78. You look at Parayko at a 76. You look at Nurse at a 73. All these guys are relatively complete. That's why they're further over to the left. You also have Shabbat here, who splits power play time. His shot volume is good. His blocks levels are good. And he does, have some points here. 45 points in 80 games last year is not bad. He's in that 0.56 to 0.60 point per game range pretty much every season. So there's a bunch of different options here. You also have Owen Power, who could get some power play 2-time, 40 points in 79, not bad. 6 power play points is a little low. Shot volume is a little low. Blocks are okay. But do want to mention him. This should be a better profile for him. He's coming into his own. He was a number 1 overall pick. So he, at ADP 190, you might as well pick him in that range. You're throwing a dart at the dartboard in that section of the draft anyway. Keandre Miller, I wouldn't draft. I've watched him for years. He's not the best fantasy player. 1.5 shots, 1.5 hits, 1.5 blocks is okay across the board. He's not a great power play quarterback. They do have Nikishin over there, who I think would get a better look on power play too than Keandre Miller would, so I wouldn't draft him. You got over here, Sean Dursey in the past has been a power play guy. I just showed you that Sergachev is that guy now, so we'll have to wait and see how it shakes out in camp. He could be the power play 2 guy. And the point per game numbers last year, not great. The ceiling is not great either. The blocks are pretty good at 1.7, but I don't necessarily love this anymore. There was a time where I would have liked him as a D3 or D4. Philip Broberg, same type of thing in terms of getting some power play exposure. He had 2 power play points last year, but not a lot. 29 points and 68 is not bad, but you're pretty much capped in terms of ceiling with where he is in the depth chart. There are a couple of other guys down here that do different things. So as I pull it down a little bit, you have Romanov, who is really good for hits and blocks, 2.3 hits, 2.58 blocks. That's what you're getting out of him. No power play exposure. Point per game is relatively low. He's a peripherals guy. You also have Zadorov, a similar profile, 2.7 hits, 1.32 blocks. You've got Bichel, who's a hitter only pretty much. 4 hits per game is excellent, but he's a hit specialist. You also have Lausanne, same thing, 4.54 hits per game, 1.2 blocks. A little bit better in terms of his profile just because of the blocks, but almost no offense whatsoever. Here's Zeev Buium. This is a projection. I threw his college numbers into the Data Draft AI, and it projected these numbers for him. And this is pretty much what I would expect from a young defenseman if he sees this much time. About 74 games, 32 points, 9 on the power play. This seems to be, just in terms of eye test, what I would expect from a guy like him if he is getting some power play time. That's not a bad profile at all. I would like to have him as a D4. I wouldn't necessarily draft him as a D3. So I've pretty much gone over every defenseman. This is the entire list. I'll bring everybody back in. We'll zoom it back out so you can kind of get a sense of where everyone falls in terms of these tiers. I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, leave me a comment in the comments section below. I'm sure some of my takes are going to stir up some controversy in the comments, so I'll look forward to reading those. Please don't hate me too much. Just going off the data. All of this was compiled using Data Draft AI, which I'll do a little bit more of a deep dive on in the future. It's still a work in progress. I'm still tweaking, trying to get the settings right. But you can get access to that and test it for yourself in the Patreon link in the description below. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.